I never imagined I'd witness a millionaire's cruel act until the waitress taught him a lesson. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started out like any other shift, a warm June afternoon. My heart raced as I wove through the crowded diner, the clinks of silverware and chatter surrounding me like a familiar blanket. Then, I spotted him. Silas Montgomery. I knew his face the way he strutted, exuding wealth and arrogance. He was the kind of millionaire who made people squirm in discomfort, a king in a castle of glass and gold. His suit was crisp, his diamond cufflinks glinting in the sunlight. But behind those dark sunglasses was something darker, a glimmer of cruelty, wrapped in charm. As I approached his table, my heart thundered. "Good afternoon, what can I get for you?" I asked, the tremor in my voice betraying my nervousness. He barely glanced at me, dismissing me as if I were just another expendable piece of furniture. "I'll have the lobster, and make it snappy. I don't have all day." His words pierced me. I smiled through the sting, but anger bubbled beneath the surface. Who did he think he was? A mere mortal held hostage by his whims. I turned, but I could feel his eyes boring into my back, waiting for my every move. As I hustled through the chaos of the kitchen, I overheard whispers. The usual gossip amongst the staff. A world of troubles, lives intertwined. Margot, my friend, shared a personal story about her baby's hospital bills, her voice tight with fear. I felt my chest tighten. That struggle uncoiled within each of us, exposed like an open wound. But Silas didn't care about struggle. He was laughter amidst our tears, a reminder of what we all didn't have. When I returned with his lobster, he scoffed at the size. "This is it." "Ridiculous," he sneered, causing a flush of humiliation to wash over me. The couple at the next table exchanged glances, their expressions mirroring the discomfort that thickened the air. With a trembling hand, I set the plate down, fighting the instinct to retreat. "I'm sorry, sir. Would you like me to get you something else?" His smile turned sinister. "No. Just be quick about it." That's when I saw her. A fellow waitress, Rosa, always unnoticed until now. She stood in the corner, her eyes burning against the backdrop of Silas' arrogance. I caught a flicker of resolve on her face. She held her head high, unyielding. Just then, Silas hollered, "Get me the manager. This place is a joke." The tension crackled, and my breath hitched. But Rosa stepped forward, unwavering. "You need to leave," she said, the calmness in her voice like a sudden silence in a storm. It stopped everyone. Who was she, this little waitress confronting a giant? His laughter boomed through the diner. "Or what?" he challenged, leaning back in his chair, confident that he had power. In that single moment, I knew we were caught in a web of disbelief. Before I could process it all, Rosa had reached for the plate. In one swift motion, she turned it, and the lobster slid right onto his lap. Gasps erupted from the surrounding tables. The rich scent mixed with an offense much deeper than food. Silas' face went white. I stood frozen, heart racing. What just happened? Rosa's eyes flashed with defiance, and I could hardly breathe. This wasn't just about a meal. This was a stand. Yet, the unfolding chaos surrounded us like a hurricane. Where would this leave us? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Chaos erupted in the diner like a thunderstorm, gasps turned to chatter, and some customers even laughed nervously. I stood rooted in shock, my heart pounding as I watched Silas wipe the remnants of lobster from his slacks. His face, once a mask of confidence, was now mottled with disbelief. Rosa seemed unfazed, a fierce silhouette against the chaos. "Get out!" Silas finally spluttered, his voice choked with indignation. "You think you can treat me like this? You'll have your jobs." Rosa didn't flinch. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. "You need to learn some respect," she shot back, her voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. An unexpected wave of admiration and camaraderie washed over me. Here was this woman, small and often overlooked, standing up to a Goliath of arrogance. It ignited something within me, a flicker of hope in what felt like a never-ending battle with the harsh realities of life, but with that brightness came the darkness, the fear that this act of rebellion would cost us all our jobs. The diner relied on tips, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Silas's wrath would stretch beyond that table, reaching every one of us. My hands trembled a bit as I considered all the responsibilities I bore: me rent, my mother's medical bills, Margot's struggles. Before I could voice my worries to Rosa, the manager stormed in. Danny, a man who often wore a thin veneer of authority, paled at the sight before him. What happened here? His eyes darted between Silas, who sputtered indignantly, and Rosa, who glared back defiantly. This waitress, she assaulted me," Silas shouted, arms wide, the lobster juices now staining the pristine white cloth of the table. Danny cleared his throat, caught in attention. His gaze landed on me, silently asking for aid. His fingers drummed against his side, anxiety written all over his face. "Is that true, Rosa?" Rosa didn't falter. "I served my customers with respect. And this one," she gestured toward Silas, "thought he could treat us like garbage. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity." That I felt a swell of support for her words, but a cold shot of dread curled in my gut. What if her courage cost us everything? The atmosphere grew thicker. A few patrons began to murmur their agreement with Rosa, faces lighting with the courage they saw reflected in her. But, as I looked around, I spotted a couple near the door whispering among themselves, their expressions darkening. It struck me then Silas had influence beyond this diner, connections that could ripple through our lives like a hidden tide. That I in the fragile stillness that followed, Silas fixed his dark eyes on Rosa with a fury that chilled my blood. "You think you're tough? This isn't over. You're going to regret this. I promise." Rosa stood her ground, but I could sense the crack in her armor, the tremor of fear she barely managed to suppress. "You can't intimidate me," she replied, though her voice was less steady now. As the tension twisted tightly, I saw a glimmer of something. An older gentleman in a fedora stood, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "This isn't right. We all bear witness to how this man treated these women. If anyone should be ashamed, it's him." Encouraged by his support, the atmosphere shifted slightly. More voices chimed in, rallying behind Rosa, their solidarity growing louder. But amidst all that bravery, despair gnawed at me. What would happen now? Silas gritted his teeth, his cheeks reddening in embarrassment as he finally stood, straightening his suit as if it could shield him from the collective judgment. "I'll call my lawyer. You'll all pay for this," he spat, and with that threat, he stormed out, the door swinging shut, leaving us in a cyclone of uncertainty. Rosa's shoulders sagged ever so slightly, and the fight within her seemed to dim, replaced by an anxiety I could sense in her silence. "That was brave, Rosa," I whispered as I stepped closer, seeking to comfort her. "But what if he does come after us?" Before she could respond, Margot rushed in from the back, eyes wide. "I heard what happened. You're all okay, right?" But I couldn't shake the feeling of dread continuing to coil around me. The room was charged with compassion, yet my mind raced ahead, wondering how long that compassion could shield us from Silas's inevitable retaliation. Just then, Danny cleared his throat again, a hint of regret flashing across his face. "Rosa, I'm sorry this happened. But I can't lose my job protecting you. We might all face repercussions from this." A shadow hung over the diner, an unspoken fear that left my heart aching. We had ignited something monumental today, yet we teetered on the edge of losing it all. As we huddled together, a soft knock echoed off the glass door, and a familiar face appeared in a flash of colors. It was May, the waitress from the cafe down the street, a friend of Rosa's, her eyes wide. "What just happened?" she asked breathlessly, her curiosity laced with concern. Suddenly, the crowd we had formed felt too small, our collective strength still insufficient against an unstoppable tide. But as I looked at Rosa and then at Margot, I felt the stirrings of unity rekindled, a flicker of possibility amid the chaos. Would our courage lead to the change we desperately needed, or was it too late to turn back now? And with that lingering thought, the diner seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the storm that lay ahead and for the truths we were yet to uncover. The evening lingered like a suspended breath, the remnants of Silas' vitriol still hanging thick in the air. As customers began to seep out one by one, glances flickered our way, blending curiosity with a hint of sympathy. But rather than offering solace, the room seemed steeped in uncertainty, like the calm before a storm. "May, it's a long story," Rosa finally said, her voice trembling slightly. "Can you help us clean up?" She motioned to the scattered remnants of our earlier chaos, the splattered lobster and scattered utensils, anything that would redirect the attention away from the tension still bubbling beneath the surface. May nodded, her brow furrowing, as she stepped in to join us behind the counter. "What did that jerk even think he was doing?" she muttered, scrubbing at the stained tablecloth. The energy of our small enclave shifted as we worked together, a fragile but undeniable unity emerging amidst the clatter of dishes and murmurs of disbelief. But, as the minutes slipped away, I felt the crushing weight of responsibility. What if we lose our jobs? I voiced the thought that spiraled within me, the question hanging heavy between us. "Danny's right. We can't afford to anger someone like him." "Forget Silas," Rosa snapped, aggression slicing through her facade of confidence. "This isn't just about us keeping our jobs. It's about standing up to what's wrong. You can't negotiate dignity." A small part of me admired her passion, but another part felt the claws of fear grip me tighter. As I watched her scrub with a fervor that betrayed her uncertainty, my heart ached for both her bravery and the consequences that might come crashing down like a wave. "Look, there will be other tables," May chimed in, her demeanor highlighting her optimism. "And we'll make it through this together. We just need to keep our heads down and support each other." But I wasn't so sure. Just outside, the evening air grew darker, heavy with impending rain, a fitting parallel to the storm conjured by Silas. As if script from some cruel play, Rosa remained the sole shining strength anchoring us. I caught her gaze as she wiped away the remnants of the day's confrontation. Behind her fierce exterior lay a flicker of doubt that mirrored my own. "That I won't let him intimidate me," she whispered, though her resolve wavered. "I can't." That I in the back corner, I saw Danny approach slowly, shoes squeaking against the tile. "I owe you an apology, Rosa," he said, avoiding the gazes of the other waitstaff, his voice a low murmur. "I wish I could stand up for you, but there are rules, and he has connections I just can't fight. It's not fair." The regret in his eyes was palpable, almost painful to witness. Rosa's shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of reality crashing down on her relentless spirit. "You think I don't know that?" she replied, a tinge of bitterness creeping into her tone. "But someone has to stand up to him." Margot, silent until this moment, finally spoke up with unexpected clarity. "We can't just let fear dictate our actions. When have we ever acted out of fear and not lost more in the end?" But amidst her fervor, doubts still flitted through my mind like shadows. What if we became collateral damage to someone else's battle? As the last stragglers departed, a reflective quiet settled over the diner. Outside, thunder rumbled ominously, and the wind began to whip, scratching against the windows like an insistent whisper. Then, just as I began to think we might find some fleeting sense of peace, the shattering clang of the door struck us again. Silas re-entered, this time with his lawyer, a man wearing a tailored suit that screamed money and power. The air seized in my lungs as I tried to process the scene unfolding. "That I gave you all a chance to back down gracefully," Silas seethed, eyes glinting with menace. But now he gestured toward his lawyer, who moved forward, voice authoritative and chilling. "We're officially filing complaints. The diner will be held accountable for the loss of my business tonight." My heart sank, fear layering itself in the pit of my stomach. Each word dripped with threats we had. Hope to escape, momentum waning like the light just before evening's encroaching grasp. Rosa stepped forward, her earlier resolve flickering like a candle in a strong wind. "You can't do that," she said, shaky but unyielding. "We did nothing wrong." The lawyer barely glanced her way, focusing on Danny like a wolf sizing up its prey. "The actions of your employees have consequences. This could be catastrophic for this establishment," he intoned with chilling pragmatism, and just like that, our moment of solidarity reshifted into a quagmire of anxiety and uncertainty. Margot looked at me, eyes wide with fear, each heartbeat echoing like a drum of dread. This was not just our fight but a battle that spread its shadow over everyone we cared for. As Silas smirked, leaning back into the chair, a ripple of shockwave coursed through the diner. The realization that our stand for dignity had merely sparked the flames of a greater conflict. In the darkening room, the first droplets of rain began to splatter against the window. In that moment, weighed down by the future that teetered precariously, I felt a final flicker of hope intertwined with fear. Perhaps amidst new challenges, we would unearth something powerful, something that could rise from the ashes of this chaos. But as I looked at my friends, their faces drawn under the weight of what lay ahead, and the storm raged outside, the words of Silas echoed ceaselessly in my mind, "This isn't over." I shivered despite the warmth of the diner, knowing with haunting certainty that what lay ahead would test us in ways we could scarcely imagine. The rain began to pour just as Rosa faced Silas and his lawyer, defiance still glimmering in her eyes, though the tremor in her voice betrayed the depth of her fear. Outside, the weather mirrored our turmoil. A torrential downpour began, transforming the world into a gray blur that felt like a reflection of our impending chaos. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the hum of our little diner buzzed in discomfort, the storm outside threatening to extinguish our sanctuary. I turned to May, whose confident smile had dimmed, but she clenched her fists, a grounding reminder of the unity we still shared. "No matter what happens, we stand together," she whispered fiercely. "We're stronger as a team." That mantra might have held some comfort if not for the shadowy figure of Silas, leaning back with an air of triumph, clearly feeding off the despair that filled the room. He exchanged a knowing look with his attorney, who began scribbling notes, meticulously documenting our every move, as if we were a collection of variables to manipulate. How much damage can the diner sustain before a reckoning? His lawyer mused as he glanced around, taking in each anxious face. Fear dripped like raindrops from the ceiling, trickling down to our souls. I felt a knot form in my stomach. We never dreamed we'd be caught in a horror like this. "Rosa, we can't let him break us," I urged, trying to infuse strength into my words. "We need to think clearly." But then the door swung open again. A gust of wind sent the scent of rain swirling into the diner like a frantic invitation. It was Tommy, the young delivery guy, his face flushed from the cold. He took one look at the tension in the room and immediately clicked into a protective mode. "What's going on?" he demanded, scanning our tight-lipped expressions. I heard shouting from the kitchen. "We're dealing with Silas and his lawyer," Margot said, gesturing subtly toward the intimidating duo. It was a testament to how hopeless she felt when she didn't even bother to mask her disdain. Something flickered in Tommy's eyes, a flash of determination ignited within him. "They can't threaten us like this. We're all in this together, right?" His words spread warmth among us like the first rays of sun cutting through the relentless storm cloud. I knew then that we could harness this communal feeling of resistance. But would it be enough? "Silas thinks he can intimidate us into submission." Rosa stepped ahead, her palms shaking but resolve hardening. "But we're not backing down." Silas rose slowly, the shadows illuminating the cruel edges of his smile. "You misunderstand, Rosa. This isn't a game of bravery. It's a game of survival. You will all face the consequences, whether you like it or not." As he leaned in closer, his eyes narrowed like the jaws of a predator, I felt the stark reality of his implications settle upon us. Danny stiffened next to me, and the flicker of sacrificed livelihoods hung heavily in the air. But as oppressive as it felt, something shifted. In that moment, Rosa met Silas' gaze with a newfound intensity. "You may have money and power, but you don't own us. This is our home, our family. You want to take what's ours, think twice. Her voice poured with passionate truth. It was raw, unrefined, but it echoed with the heartbeat of our collective struggle. Surprisingly, May began to clap softly, then louder as the momentum gathered. I joined in, a hesitant but growing wave of support. Even Margot, who had always been cautious, caught on and nodded her approval. The sound of our assembled voices filled the air, bolstering the gasping remnants of doubt that clung to me. Silas' expression soured, and the moment seemed to stretch. But still, he maintained his composure, even as the tension crackled like electricity in the room. As the clapping ceased, a heavy silence settled again, casting a heavy spell over our small group. It was Tommy who broke it. What's the next step? We can't just let this go, he stated, making eye contact with each of us. You've got fight worthy of every corner of this diner, and it matters, but uncertainty swept over my heart as the atmosphere thickened with an unspoken question: how far could we push back against a man like Silas? What would be lost in this fight for dignity? The rapid patter of rain against the windows intensified, and I suddenly envisioned the very worst outcomes. Our little diner shuddered, homes lost, friendships fraying into the distance like smoke. Then, as I reflected on this disturbing future, the door swung open once more, drenched customers stomping in, seeking warmth and shelter. As they stepped inside, their eyes widened at the sight of our showdown with Silas. It turned out that the storm outside hadn't just uprooted our confidence, it had summoned an unexpected crowd of allies, the regulars, the patrons whose lives we'd touched with our humble service. Looks like everyone's here for the party, Rosa quipped, a half-smile breaking through the tension, but her eyes darted nervously to the lawyer's poised pen. My heart soared amidst the chaos, lifted by this spontaneous camaraderie, but the haunting shadow of Silas loomed larger. They don't understand, he sneered, addressing the newcomers like a serpent eyeing prey. This fancy little diner is about to get buried beneath the weight of consequences. And just like that, everything shifted again. The air became thicker with uncertainty, and the familiar warmth of home faded as the storm tightened its grip. Suddenly, I felt a shiver run down my spine, a deep sense of foreboding emerging. In that moment, my phone buzzed in my pocket, vibrating with an urgency that shattered the oppressive silence. I hesitated for a heartbeat, then flipped it open. The message was clear and jarring, a notification from the diner's Bandcan alert that set my heart racing. Funds were missing, transactions flagged for suspicious activity. I turned pale, staring at my friends, knowing that our fight just morphed into something deeper, something potentially irreversible. We'd hoped to stand our ground, but now, with the threat of losing our entire livelihood snaking around our necks, I realized this was just the beginning. As Silas' smirk widened, shadows deepened, and the weight of impending change settled heavily upon us. What more could he possibly take? And where would we draw the line when our futures became intertwined with one relentless enemy? The storm outside raged on, and for us, the battle truly had just begun. The din of chatter and rainy cacophony faded as I stood, frozen, clutching my phone like it held the key to my warring thoughts. The news of our bank account being compromised sent shivers down my spine. Guys, I croaked, my voice barely above the storm's roar. Rosa glanced at me with an urgency that masked her fears. What is it? It's not just Silas, there are funds missing from the diner's account. They flagged transactions as suspicious. My heart raced as I spoke. We might not just be facing a lawsuit. We could lose everything. A wave of anxiety rippled through the assembled group as eyes darted back to Silas, who wore that infuriating smile, as though our unraveling was the grandest show he had ever seen. It felt like our sanctuary was being swallowed whole by his relentless ambition. May's brow furrowed deeply. How did this happen? We've always been careful, Silas must have something to do with it, Margot said, her voice taut. He wouldn't just call in the lawyer for intimidation, he's orchestrated this. Their murmurs collided with the rising treble of thunder, and I could see the hope waning as the weight of reality settled onto our shoulders. The diner, our hearts and souls woven into each corner, faced a greater threat than we ever anticipated. I won't let him destroy us, Tommy said, stepping forward, determination carving lines across his young face. Let's find out what's happening behind the scenes. We can figure this out together, but how? Danny chimed in, his face reflecting confusion tinged with fear. We don't even know where to start. He has $1 billion backing. Even with our support, it might not be enough. Maybe we can enlist the help of our regulars. May suggested, her eyes lighting up with newfound hope. There's power in numbers, right? We can show Silas that we're not just a diner, we're a community. The idea caught fire, igniting a flicker of defiance within us all. We could host a meeting tomorrow, gather everyone, Margot added. Share what's happening so they can support the fight, maybe even find resources to counteract Silas. Murmurs of agreement surged throughout the diner, and we slowly began to rally together, strategizing amidst the storm of uncertainty. But even while a plan began to form, I felt a gnawing sense of dread gnawing beneath the rallying cries. Silas was already 10 steps ahead of us, and how far could we push against someone who thrived on chaos? The door swung open again, and a familiar face entered. Clara, our oldest patron, who had been with the diner since its inception. She was saturated, her usual vibrant spirit dampened by the rain. But when she noticed us, her eyes softened with concern. What a ruckus! She exclaimed, struggling against the shrieking wind. What's happened? You all look like you faced a storm worse than outside. Clara. May rushed to her side, quickly explaining the predicament. The sudden rush of her warmth enveloped us like sunlight breaking through the clouds, and Clara listened intently, her expression turning serious. Every storm passes, my dear, she said, her hands warm and reassuring as they clasped May's. You all have something that money cannot buy, heart. And when it comes to standing tall, worth is often measured by one's spirit, but it's more than business here. He's threatening everything we've built. I blurted out, unable to mask my frustration. What if he wins, Clara? Then we prove to him that he's underestimated us, Clara replied, her voice steady. Trust in those who care about you. Lay our worries bare, and you'll find strength within each other. Suddenly, the sound of thunder engulfed the diner, shaking the walls, but Clara's presence made it palpable, her wisdom embedded in every inch of the diner we cherished. What if this plan of uniting our customers could rally the great multitudes? It felt like a spark ignited, but before I could express it, her expression shifted, her brow furrowed deeply as she glanced toward Silas, who watched us like a hawk. You need to remember, she cautioned, some storms expose our deepest fears, but others help us uncover hidden power. Her words struck like a lightning bolt. The emotional struggle sharpened into focus. Though we feared Silas and his threats, there was something even more pressing to uncover. What wild card remained hidden in this impending storm? As Clara left to gather others, the realization homebound within my heart was urgent. I had to dig deeper. Something felt off about the financial discrepancies. With a resolve brewing, I resolved to investigate further, question anything I could find about Silas and the potential corruption seeping into the fibers of our lives. Look for anything unusual, I whispered to Rosa, who nodded with determination. We need to be ready for what's coming. But before I could draw a breath of relief, my phone buzzed yet again. Another alert chimed in, this time illuminating an unidentified transfer, large sum seemingly going to some anonymous account tied to Silas' empire. My heart sank. Were we entangled in a more treacherous game than I'd ever guessed? As faces turned bleak, I stared into the uncertain future unfolding like a swirling tempest outside. Silas may have played his cards well, but the greater storm ahead loomed threateningly on our horizon. The rain continued pouring, each drop a reminder that no matter how this battle turned, we were already deep within the storm, with the real question being, how long could we survive its onslaught? The diner hummed with a tension that felt foreign and electric. Even Clara's words of encouragement faded against the heartbeat of uncertainty that pulsed through us. Tomorrow we were to rally our community, but tonight, shadows loomed and Silas cast the biggest one of all. Guys, I gathered everyone close, their expressions a mixture of hope and trepidation. We need to split up tonight. Look through anything we have, financial records, past emails, any correspondence with Silas or his associates. We have to find a chink in his armor. As we dispersed with determined frowns, I felt the weight of the world rest upon my shoulders. The diner had always been a refuge of warmth and laughter, and now it morphed into a battleground where every creak of the floor and clatter of silverware hinted at looming defeat. I headed to the office and started sifting through the old invoices, tax returns, anything that could give us a shred of hope. Hours slipped by as I hunched over the desk, the dim light casting long shadows on the walls. I moved piles of receipts aside, my heart racing with each piece of evidence I unearthed. Then, buried below a stack of bills, I spotted an envelope addressed to me from a law firm I'd never heard of. Confused, I opened it carefully, examining the contents. My eyes widened as I deciphered the legal jargon scrawled across the page. It held a notification of a pending lawsuit against us, not from Silas but from the previous owner of the diner. The news twisted my insides in knots. Could it be possible that Silas wasn't just leveraging our current troubles but also had a hand in reviving old feuds, rekindling flames so carefully extinguished? My mind raced, piecing together the threads. How everything felt far more orchestrated than I had ever imagined. "Jenna! Come look at this!" I yelled, urgency bursting from my lungs. I needed someone to comprehend the magnitude of this revelation. She rushed in, brows knitted in concern, but when she read the letter, her eyes widened. "Do you think?" She hesitated, glancing down the hallway as if Silas could leap from the shadows at any moment. "Is it possible that he stirred this up to further distract us? To destabilize everything we've built? Silas has too many connections. The previous owner was just the start." I understood now. My heart began to race as I realized we were caught in a web spun meticulously by someone who thrived on chaos. "We have to get this information out to our regulars before he makes his next move." Just then, an ominous clap of thunder echoed, rattling the diner once more. The storm outside mirrored the storm within me, and I felt paralyzed, swept away as the world around us threatened to crumble. We gathered back in the main area, our voices a crescendo of worry and determination. Each of us offering ideas to confront Silas, but doubt painted a veil over our hopes. Suddenly, the door swung open, and Tommy burst in, soaked but exhilarated. "I went to see Clara, and she's gathering people for tomorrow's meeting. You won't believe what she mentioned," she said. She'd heard whispers from some of our regulars about businesses struggling due to Silas's intimidation tactics. "He's not just after us," his words hung in the air. The diner's walls, which had witnessed countless laughter and the milling of life, now felt like they carried echoes of fear and anguish. Could we rally more than just our loyal customers? Could we stand against a man who seemingly controlled everything in his path? That means he's revealed himself. We can't let him win. I felt the fire deep within me flare up again. I wouldn't let the embodiment of greed snuff out our dreams. Jenna stepped forward. "Let's invite those businesses to join forces. If Silas is targeting others, we become a united front. Survival relies on everyone who believes in what we stand for." Hope flickered like the first glimmers of dawn, but as I looked around the diner, each face reflected both determination and a plethora of fears. "Tomorrow," I echoed, clenching my fists, "we won't just show Silas who we are, we will show him the spirit of a community. Bonded by love." As fervor swelled amongst us, I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was late, far too late, yet a sudden roar outside drew my attention. A car screeching to a halt outside. Footsteps echoed, and the tense atmosphere ignited once more as Silas entered, swagger on full display, a smirk plastered across his face. "I am just here to remind you," his voice cut through the din like a knife, "this isn't over." As he turned his gaze toward me, I felt a chill skimming down my spine. My heart thundered in response to the challenge that crackled between us. This would only intensify. We were more than just pawns on a chessboard, and he had no idea what depths of resolve we were prepared to unleash, but a new revelation curled around my heart. In the shadow of his presence, I suddenly recalled something from my earlier research: an old connection between Silas and the previous owner, a detail etched deep within the folds of the diner's history, one I had overlooked. What if I could rattle Silas's cage by digging up skeletons he wished to keep buried? As he sauntered away with parting threats lingering in the air, I grappled with the swell of uncertainty. Would this hidden connection be our lifeline, or would it plunge us deeper into a perilous game where the stakes were rising at an alarming rate? Tomorrow promised confrontation, but I was beginning to grasp that greater truths lay beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed. Our battle was far from over, it was only just beginning with the storm betraying the secrets of a millionaire's relentless ambition and the waitress who stood ready to confront it all. The diner buzzed with soft conversations and the scent of brewing coffee, but inside me lay a torrent of fear and resolve. I watched as the other team members dispersed, energy electrifying the air around us. They were confiding in each other, planning strategies, but I felt like an island amid a sea of doubt. Silas's chilling words replayed like a taunt in my mind, igniting the fear I fought so hard to suppress. After everyone filed out to prepare for tomorrow's battle, I remained seated at the counter, staring at the flickering neon sign outside. The storm had calmed into a gentle drizzle, but the storm inside me raged on. I couldn't unravel the weight of the law firm's letter. It seemed unthinkable. The previous owner knew the diner's vulnerabilities, and now, with Silas' influence entwining everything, it felt as if the walls of our haven were closing in. I needed a distraction, a small escape from the chaos that threatened to engulf me. I got up and washed the dishes left from dinner service, the rhythmic clinking of plates calming my racing thoughts. As I scrubbed, I recalled the countless memories tied to the diner: children laughing while sharing banana splits, friends mourning over cups of coffee, couples huddled in quiet corners whispering sweet nothings. Each memory solidified my resolve: I wouldn't let Silas take this away from us. Moments later, Jenna appeared, her face illuminated by the warm glow of the overhead lights. "You okay?" she asked gently, wiping her wet hands on her apron. "Honestly?" I shook my head, overwhelmed. What if all this is too much? What if we lose everything because of one man playing with our lives? She stepped closer, concern etched in her features. "We can't let fear dictate our choices. We have each other. Look around, everyone involved in this. We're stronger together. And we'll show them that." I let her words sink in, trying to shed the heavy coat of despair. But how could I be certain? Just then, the bell above the door jingled, pulling us from our moment. Clara entered, her presence a breath of fresh air. "I just spoke with a few neighboring businesses," she said, her enthusiasm infectious. "They're willing to join our cause. If we present a united front, I believe we can stand against Silas." The flicker of hope she ignited restored some strength within me. "You really think they'll rally behind us?" "Absolutely. They're scared too, but seeing our determination inspired them. This community is resilient. Remember how we came together last summer during the festival? We can do it again." I couldn't help but smile at the memory of that summer evening: colorful lights twinkling, laughter pouring into the night, our diner overflowing with patrons. "You're right," I said, feeling that familiar warmth travel through my veins. "We really can." As the three of us formed a plan for tomorrow, we were fraught with a mix of excitement and gut-clenching anxiety. The weight of the battle loomed larger than ever, but we had a semblance of clarity. We made a list of talking points, crucial messages to resonate with others to draw them into our cause. Later that night, as I stood at the counter with a cup of coffee, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. A determined gaze met my own. I felt the swell of courage burst within me. This fight wasn't just about keeping the diner. It was about standing up against a man who thought he could extinguish our dreams with his wealth, our hopes with his threat. The morning sun would rise on a different day, filled with promise and terror, but I'd prepare for battle. I would not let fear hold me hostage to silence. At dawn, I parked my car in front of the diner, the familiar red brick structure standing strong against the backdrop of a brightening sky. I shot a glance at the front door, steeling myself for the meeting. The regulars would arrive soon, their faces a tapestry of familiar smiles and unwavering support. As people started trickling in, a warmth enveloped me, conversations blossomed, shared uncertain smiles transformed into nods of understanding. I could feel the solidarity strengthen the walls of our diner, wrapping us with hope as we prepared our message for the oncoming storm. Then suddenly, the door burst open, and a young woman I barely recognized rushed in. "I'm sorry, I know this is crazy, but I overheard some things. The townspeople, they might be more involved than we thought." Her eyes darted around the room, scanning for trust, seeking validation. Instinctively, my heart raced. Could this be a small crack in Silas' wall, an opening we could exploit? What do you mean? I said, leaning in as everyone fell silent. I overheard Silas speaking to the old diner owner last week. They were talking about sabotaging businesses that wouldn't bow to him. He's planning something. He's desperate. The frantic urgency in her voice sank like a stone in my gut. Desperate men are dangerous. I felt the weight of understanding settle over us, heavy yet empowering. Thank you for telling us, I spoke evenly, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. But we need to act fast and protect ourselves. As I glanced around at the faces of my community, I felt uncertainty creep in. Could we truly rise against the invisible chains he was weaving? Silas would only grow bolder with each passing moment. The day promised confrontation, but suddenly I felt an ominous twist in my gut, the sense of an imminent revelation lurking just beyond the edge of our plans. A dark wave surged over looming threat of Silas' retaliation. Tomorrow would demand our courage and clarity. But now, faced with this new information and the gravity of our endeavor, a chilling realization set in: we weren't merely defending a diner anymore. We were standing on the precipice of something much larger, a struggle to reclaim our lives, our dignity, and the heart of our community against a millionaire with a cruelty that knew no bounds. As the hours passed that anxious day, the coffee pots brewed incessantly, crafting a bittersweet aroma that wrapped around us like a comforting blanket. The warmth of the diner couldn't completely erase the icy grip of uncertainty that coated my heart. I had spent the last few hours going through the motions of serving customers and chatting mechanically, all while the nerves in my stomach twisted tighter with each passing moment. The regulars were supportive, bringing their stories of resilience bent against the force of Silas' oncoming threat. Yet, while they offered their anecdotes, I felt fear clenching like a fist at my throat. Standing up against Silas consumed my thoughts, his calculated malice burned like a brand in my mind. What are we going to do? Jenna asked, her voice a whisper of dread as she washed the dishes sidelong next to me. I looked out the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. Maybe he'll back off if we show strength. I ventured, not quite believing my own words. The image of Silas and his men in tailored suits laughing at our naive hope crept in like an unwelcome shadow. Strength, or a good plan. Clara interjected, pouring sugar into a comically large mug shaped like a cow, her distraction seeming to lighten the air, even if only slightly. If he thinks he has us cornered, he might act rashly. We could use that against him. Maybe Clara was right. There was a certain wisdom to addressing our vulnerability with a strategic plan, but was it enough to keep his betrayal at bay? The murmurs of the community were starting to gather, voices intertwining like strands of a fragile web. Suddenly, as if fate sought to demonstrate its own mockery, the door swung open with force. A figure stood silhouetted in the threshold, radiating an energy that froze the moment. Silas. The sunlight cast a sharp shadow across the diner as he strode in, arrogance and confidence rippling off him in waves. The conversations quieted immediately, the buzzing anticipation of the day replaced with a collective gasp of disbelief. "Good morning, everyone," he announced, his voice smooth and mocking, drawing out the last word as if to savor the moment. My heart thudded against my chest. He was here, daring us to respond. "I've come to remind you that it would be wise to heed my advice rather than defy it. What do you want, Silas?" I managed to ask, fighting desperately to keep my voice steady. He approached the counter, his presence imposing and malevolent. He leaned in, a predatory grin forming on his lips as he scanned the room. "Oh, I'm simply offering a friendly suggestion to a handful of misplaced souls. It would be terribly disappointing if someone were to encounter a minor accident or two. A fire here, a burst pipe there. Accidents happen, after all. A chill spread throughout the diner, fingers curling instinctively around cups as faces paled around me. I could see Jenna's fierce resolve flicker before narrowing once more. "You're a monster," she spat, her fragility morphing into defiance. Silas laughed, the sound chilling and devoid of humanity. "No, I'm simply a businessman ensuring the success of my investments. This diner," he said, gesturing dismissively, is but a temporary blemish in the path of progress. Adapt, or step aside. His words dripped from his lips like poison, sinking deep into the hearts of my community. In their eyes, I saw the reflection of fear, what we all felt coiling tightly, seen clearly now. It wasn't just our establishments at risk, it was our very identities. Before I could summon the courage to speak, Silas turned, ready to leave, but paused, as if momentarily struck by the atmosphere he had wrought. His gaze lingered on me, a predatory glint igniting in his eyes. "Oh, and do keep an eye on that little lady," he said, nodding over his shoulder towards the young woman who had first alerted us. "People talk, and sometimes they don't realize how easy it is to accidentally disappear." With that, he glided out like a shadow, melting back into the dark. The air in the diner felt thick with an unshakable dread. I turned to face Clara and Jenna, our expressions reflecting an unspoken understanding we were all at risk now, deeper than we had ever dared to imagine. "That I can't believe he just threatened us like that," Clara finally whispered, shaken but resolute. "That we can't back down," I said, feeling the weight of history and community pressing on me. "He wants chaos, let's channel it. He thinks he can intimidate us, but we know our worth." "Exactly," Jenna agreed, her expression focused and fierce. "We need to counterattack. Rally those businesses, gather more voices to drown his threats. If they hear him, they'll know we're not backing down." The urgency of our plight ignited something in us, burning through the cold fear that had touched our hearts. Together, we rallied the community, spinning our own web of strength. We reached for our phones and sent messages, reaching out to everyone we knew, inviting them to come, to unite, to push against the tide that Silas had created. In those moments between responding to messages and crafting plans, I caught a glimpse of that same young woman from before, peeking into the diner with wide eyes. She took a tentative step forward, then paused once more. Something in her stance told me she understood how pressing our situation had become, but she also seemed hesitant. As I approached her, the din of the diner faded, replaced by a tumult of questions thrumming in my mind. "Are you all right?" I asked gently. She hesitated, taking a breath that seemed to tremble with unshed emotion. I'm scared," she admitted. "But I can help. I think I know something about Silas. Something that could change everything." Just as she began to share her information, the lights flickered ominously, sending a ripple of tension through the room. Suddenly, we heard a loud crash from the back of the diner, a sound that seemed to echo the upheaval within us, the flickering faith that stood here right now on the precipice of both despair and rebellion. I turned just as another crash followed, a cacophony of shattering glass slipping into an unfolding spiral of chaos, flickering light casting our shadows against the walls until they danced like specters of our fears. I never imagined I'd witness a millionaire's cruel act until today, I thought, as the burgeoning darkness enveloped us, each moment fraught with strife yet laden with the possibility of rising. The sharp crack of glass shattering against the floor reverberated through the diner, snapping the fragile air of rebellion like a brittle twig. Instinctively, I turned back to the young woman standing before me, her wide eyes mirroring the turmoil swirling just beneath the surface. "Stay here," I commanded, though part of me wondered if I was capable of keeping anyone safe. I felt the weight of failure creeping in as I stepped toward the source of chaos, with Clara and Jenna close behind, rallying our collective courage. Flashes of panic whipped through the diner's patrons as they scrambled for cover, some ducking beneath tables, others covering their heads protectively. I reminded myself that we had come together as one community, that our desperate hearts were forged into a single entity now, and with that resolve, I approached the back of the diner. As I moved cautiously, the familiar scent of coffee and grease hung in the air, oddly juxtaposed against the growing clamor and tension. My mind raced with unspoken thoughts of Silas, the embodiment of everything we feared, that elusive specter lurking behind real-life devastation. Before I could process much further, I reached the kitchen door just as the final remnants of tension built to a near breaking point, a situation I wasn't prepared to face. The kitchen table had been overturned, pots and pans scattered like fallen soldiers after an unseen battle. But there, amidst the wreckage, was a figure I never expected to see, Silas' right-hand man, Greg, with a threatening demeanor that sent a shiver down my spine. "Thought you could hide in here, huh?" he sneered, picking up a heavy frying pan as if it were a mere toy. His eyes glinted with malice, drawing a visceral dread that gripped my heart. I glanced back instinctively, ensuring Jenna and Clara were still behind me, their presence a faint beacon of hope in the otherwise chaotic scene. "Get out, Greg," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You don't want this fight. Oh, but that's where you're wrong," he countered, stepping closer, the metal clanging against his hip with each menacing stride. "Silas' orders are pretty clear, sweetheart. Remove the dregs from the equation. You should have known better than to defy him." Fear intertwined with anger inside me, battling for dominance as I glanced back at my friends. "We won't let you walk all over us," Clara shouted defiantly. Courage sparked into solidarity, forming a thread connecting us all, keeping the darkness at bay for now, but Greg simply laughed. "Oh, sweet naive girls, you think your defiance means anything? You're out of your league here." "Then let's prove it," Jenna replied, taking a daring step forward as if clutching onto her own pulse of bravery. She grabbed a nearby rolling pin, wielding it like a sword, a mischievous light glimmering in her eyes that even I found contagious. Before anyone could respond or act, Greg swung the frying pan toward Jenna, and time seemed to slow. I rushed forward, throwing myself in her path, bracing for the impact I feared would leave me shattered. But it never came. In its place emerged a loud crash as the back door slammed open, revealing a gust of wind rushing in accompanied by a fierce shout. "What the hell is going on in here?" It was Marcus, our steadfast neighbor and local mechanic, storming in, eyes ablaze and posture commanding a presence strong enough to halt the moment cold. Without hesitation, he darted across the room and landed a firm shove to Greg's shoulder, sending him stumbling back. "You don't dare touch them." Greg's laughter quickly transformed into something sinister as he regained his footing. "You think you can protect them? Just wait until Silas hears about this. Hell, make sure everyone here pays for your foolishness. This isn't over." With that, he darted toward the kitchen exit, leaving the chaos in his wake as sirens echoed in the distance, painting everything in shades of disaster. As the dust settled, breaths came out shuddering and heavy in the air. Clara collapsed against the wall, her hands shaking. Jenna looked at me, wide-eyed, a mixture of terror and triumph washing over her flushed face. "Did we just survive that?" she asked incredulously, her voice a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "Nothing is ever over when Silas is involved," I replied, still trying to steady my heart that was racing to a timeless beat of uncertainty. "This is just the beginning." Our small core of resistance ignited a flicker of hope amongst the spectators who had gathered. The hum of whispers began to weave round the diner, alternating between shock and admiration for what we had momentarily achieved. But even as the words of courage echoed in our midst, something gnawed at me. Greg's parting words haunted me, weaving truisms into a gruesome tapestry of fear. What did he mean by "this isn't over"? "Wait," I heard the voice of our young ally, the one who had seen Silas' cruelty firsthand. She edged closer, her demeanor shifting from fear to furtive determination. "I know something that could turn the tide, but we need to act fast before it's too late." Just as hope flickered brightly in my chest, a loud slam resounded through the diner, the faint outline of figures gathering just outside. The community watched as silhouettes formed at the entrance, hearts racing once more, not at the prospect of victory but at the dread of a confrontation looming just beyond the threshold. I looked into the eyes of my friends, knowing that this was only the beginning, and the real fight was yet to come. Today marked the culmination of a storm that had raged in my soul since that fateful day Silas Montgomery sauntered into our diner. He was the embodiment of everything cruel and arrogant in this world, a sharp suit draped over an insatiable appetite for power and control. But today, as the rain drummed rhythmically against the windows, I could feel the electricity of unyielding resolve coursing through our makeshift army of waitresses, regulars, and new allies, all banded together for a cause greater than ourselves. The morning sun broke through the clouds as we gathered, each face reflecting a tapestry of hope, fear, and an unyielding commitment to fight back. The diners, cafe owners, and local businesspeople embraced the narrative we began crafting. It was about more than just the diner. No, it was about dignity, respect, and community. The stories shared around the tables were embers sparking into flame, igniting a fire of determination in every heart present. Today, we stand united, I declared, my voice steady, resonating against the walls imbued with history. I felt the heat of passion burning within me as I locked eyes with Jenna, Clara, and those who had gathered. We were more than just workers, we were part of a collective fabric that formed this community, and Silas' threat could not rip it apart. We've faced intimidation and cruelty, but we will not back down. Together, we will show Silas that we are not just a diner, we are a family fighting for our home. As the last echoes of my words faded, a chorus of voices joined, rising up like a resistance anthem. The assembled crowd became a rallying force. Hands were lifted, fists clenched, and resolve strengthened with every heartbeat. As we prepared to take our stance against Silas, I could feel the determination palpably weave through each of us, pure, uncorrupted, and unwavering. Then, without warning, the front door burst open. Silas stood there, flanked by his intimidating lawyer and bodyguard, a slow, sardonic smile spreading across his face like a wolf in a den of sheep. The atmosphere thickened as he surveyed the crowd, eyes gleaming with malicious delight at the prospect of exploitation. "What's this? An uprising?" he taunted, cocking his head mockingly. "How quaint. Your reign of terror ends here, Silas," Jenna shot back, emboldened by our collective strength. Her bravery sparked a wave of defiance rippling among us. Silas chuckled, but I could see a crack in his carefully crafted facade, a flicker of uncertainty beneath the arrogance. "You understand the power I wield, don't you? This diner means nothing to me. I can erase you all with a snap of my fingers." His voice oozed with the confidence of someone who believed the world bent to his will, but Clara stepped forward, a quiet fire in her eyes. "You may have connections and influence, but you've underestimated the bond we share. This isn't just a job for us, it's home." The words hung like a banner in the air, and murmurs of agreement rolled through the crowd. Then, in a moment he'll always remember, the young woman who had first spoken of Silas's plot stepped forward, her face set in determination. "I heard you once took something from this diner, something that made you feel unstoppable. Somewhere, buried in its history, lies the truth about you." The challenge hung heavy in the air, the spark of rebellion igniting something fierce. At that instant, I seized upon the moment, pulling together the strands of the past and present that bound us. "We've seen the damage you've inflicted, but you only throw stones at us because you fear what we can become together. We won't let you harm us. Well, dig through the ashes of our past, and if you think you're untouchable, we will uncover every dark secret to hold you accountable." Courage surged through me like a storm, and I could feel the community rallying behind our shared resolve. Silas' smirk faltered, replaced with a flicker of concern. "You think you can play that game?" His voice was trembling now, uncertainty battling against arrogance. But emboldened by our unity, I stepped closer, and with a calm that belied my racing heart, I replied, "We're not playing games. We're taking back our power." The truth hung palpably between us, a resonant reminder that while he thrived on greed and intimidation, we were fueled by heart, spirit, and the bonds that refused to be severed. Then, the world around us seemed to still, the tension thick enough to slice through. Although I sensed the storm within Silas brewing, I stood firm. "Take your threats and leave. We will no longer live in fear of you. We're fighting back." The silence echoed louder than any verbal confrontation ever could, and for the first time, I truly believed this was our moment. Silas leaned back, trying to regain his composure, but the power had shifted. "You've made a grave mistake," he spat weakly, attempting to regain control with sinister bravado, but it rang hollow. As he turned to leave, I caught a glimmer of his miscalculation, the birth of a storm he had ignited. The door swung shut behind him, sealing the weight of uncertainty within the diner, but it had also lifted the shroud of oppression from our hearts. Faced with the realization that though battles may continue, the war was ours to shape, the electric thrill of resilience surged through me. "We will rise," I declared, and the resounding echoes of agreement swept through our gathering like wildfire. "Let's gather the evidence, share our stories, and send shockwaves of awareness through this community. We won't allow injustice to thrive any longer." Clara rallied the group, igniting the latent fire of change within each of us. As we turned back to our work, unity thrumming through every connection forged here. I held a fragile hope this fight might lead us down a road we never expected, a road where vengeance didn't just lie solely in fear, but transformed into solidarity, that we might never entirely defeat the shadows that had followed us, but we could reclaim our narratives. And as I took a breath, surrounded by those who had become more than friends but family, I understood the universe wasn't written just by millionaires. Our stories would intertwine and shine as light against this darkness. Today, against the backdrop of fading storms and scattering shadows, we stepped boldly toward our truth. Darkness may exist in this world, but even the smallest flicker of light, a single waitress courage, could illuminate the path to freedom. Together, we would rise unbroken. And with that ignited resolve, I whispered the words that would echo long after: we are stronger than our fears, and if we remain together, we can weather any storm.